and Shelly Loves Books. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of July. Unfortunately, I wasn't super excited with what I got accomplished in July, although I did read 7 books. I should not be complaining, but I just felt like I could have done more. There was a good 2 weeks in there I didn't even get to crack a book, which is really depressing. I just got way too busy with life. School is right around the corner. I've decided that I'm going to homeschool my kids for they're kind of doing by quarter, so like the first 9 weeks. If you sign up for it, like you can't go back and forth. So we kind of had to decide if we were going to homeschool or brick and mortar school. We decided to go ahead and homeschool. So I'm like really stressed out, really freaking out, really trying to find the best home management system to do this thing right instead of being thrown into it like we all were in March and just be completely in over our heads. So it's been a lot. But now that it is August, I feel like I've already done all my school, back to school shopping for my kids. I have done a lot of planning stuff. I feel like I'm ready and I am excited to get into some reading again. So anyways, I'm gonna be skipping over all the usual mumbo jumbo about statistics and details that nobody really cares about. I don't even really care anymore. I'm just excited that I get the opportunity to read, and I'm going to have to be scaling back on my YouTube channel because of all the extra responsibilities that comes with homeschooling. First, I read the Runaways Volume 1, which is a graphic novel series. This follows the kids of supervillains. These kids discover, I guess these kids kind of grown up together. They know of each other for many years. Their parents have all been friends, so they get together a couple times a year. And this occasion, they wind up walking in on a private meeting and discover that their parents are supervillains. So then they kind of go down this rabbit hole, and yeah, it all gets laid out on the table. Shit goes down, shit gets serious, and I really did enjoy it. However, I just feel like with all the other things that I want to read, it obviously didn't impress me that much. I'm not running out to go pick up the next one. It didn't give me all the feels. It was fun and entertaining and I liked the concept, but there's a lot of more entertaining things to read. I'm giving this book 3 stars, but absolutely nothing against the series itself. The next thing I read was Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Also the woman who wrote Circe, a book I just acquired. Unfortunately, I was not as impressed with this book. I read Silence of the Girls the month prior, and I really loved it. I did, however, like the romance aspect. I did find that very sweet. I think it was mostly all of the battle scenes and the politics that I really got bogged down with, and I'm really thinking that that's where it's failing for me. It's definitely a solid story. I loved the writing, and I actually listened to this on audiobook, and I thought that the narrator, Fraser Douglas, did a really good job. I really liked his voice, and I felt like he did a really good job. The next book I read was for Cramathon. I didn't mention that there were 2 readathons this past month, Fantasy-a-thon and Cramathon, which I participated in both. This one I specifically picked up for Cramathon. It was the one book I really finished. First day of Cramathon, I felt really good about that. And this is called The Girl and the Ghost. Let me go grab a book. And that is The Girl and the Ghost by Anna Alkhaf. This is an Own Voices book. This author is Malaysian. I guess apparently she writes a lot of stories with a lot of Malaysian culture in it. That came through really strongly in this book. I really enjoyed it. So this is a middle grade Malaysian story about a girl who inherits a palisade, which is basically like a ghost, but not in a traditional ghostly sense. This is a ghost or spirit that attaches itself to a person, and it must have a master. A palisade will also do its master's bidding. They have a natural propensity for evil, which totally gave me yokai vibes. When Pink, the palisade, moves on to the granddaughter of his late host, everything is different for him, and they become the best of friends. As the girl grows up, she gets a human friend, which bring our characters to deal with issues of betrayal and jealousy and growing apart. This book was so good. I gave it 5 stars. It was really dark for a children's book. I was very surprised. The copy that I read is an ARC, and I know when I was doing my research on the book and the author, she did say that immediately after the ARC was given out that there is a scene in here that she's going to rewrite right off the bat because of something. I really couldn't tell you. Nothing stood out to me. The whole book was pretty dark, but in a good way. Like, I really, really liked it. The next book I read was The House at the Edge of Night. This was my one summer read. There was about 5 books that were really summery that I wanted to get to, but I finally at the end of summer made a point to get to at least one of them. And this was the book of choice. It's called The House at the Edge of Night by Catherine Banner. This book takes place in Castellmare, which is an island off the coast of Italy. I was highly anticipating this book for the island vibes. I'm very fascinated with Italian culture, and one day I will go to Italy. This book starts off in the early 1900s and follows the characters through generations. I really loved our earliest characters and their simplistic life living on this island. They're not very rich individuals. They do a lot of like bartering and trading services for goods, and I just loved that aspect of this. They really lived in their own little world away from the mainlanders and almost kind of like the real world issues. It wasn't until well into the war that issues of the real world kind of washed up on their shores of this island, and the children, young boys, wanted to volunteer, be a part of the war, and they got shipped off. A lot of our characters on this island feels like a really tiny town feel. Everyone knows everyone's business, and our main character is moved there from the mainland. He was just enchanted by the place, got a job as Il Dottore, which is the doctor. He didn't go to school to be a doctor. He basically earned his doctor status by apprenticeship, but this little island had never had a doctor hadn't had a doctor in a century until he comes along, and I thought that that was really cool. As he's going around doing his duties and visiting everyone, getting to know everyone on the island, like he has a little book of stories, which I thought was really cool. Some other characters are the Count and Countess of the island, and a big scandal happens. They're probably the wealthiest people on the island. As the story moved ahead, it followed all of their children's lives while they're growing up and having their own children. I did kind of start to lose interest in that. There's also another scene in here, or another part in here, when our main character has his daughter. There is a scene in here that brought tears to my eyes. It was very hard-hitting. Where this book gets its title from, The House at the Edge of Night, is actually a building on the island that our main character just falls in love with. When he first moves to the island for many years, he just has a small like little apartment, but eventually sets his sights on refurbishing this broken down little shack, this house at the edge of night, because of how it looks when it's sitting up on its little hill. The history of this place is so enchanting, and how they make it their own home and grow their own memories of their family in this home. Like, it is just so cool. It's so cool to have a place like that. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. It was only a little bit of a letdown because about halfway through, we kind of move from the first characters that are introduced in this book. They get older, they start having their own children, and their children have children. We start moving into more of their storylines, which granted they're interesting, but I just fell in love with the primary characters and I was all into their drama, and it just kind of started to slow down a lot for me there. There's about how far I got with the physical book, and then I moved over and checked out the audiobook. The narrator of the audiobook was Edoardo Ballerini, I think that's how you would say it. He has a really nice Italian accent that really matched my idea of how our main character's voice would sound. So it transitioned from reading the physical book to transitioning midway through the book to the audiobook very nicely. I almost enjoyed hearing Edoardo's voice so much better than the voice I had in my head, so I really enjoyed the audiobook. I think that in general this genre of literary fiction is not the strongest genre for me. It's something I'm kind of newly breaking into. I have several books on my shelves that I really cannot wait to read. I think similar books in this genre that I have, 100 Years of Solitude and Carmelo. Those two I would really like to get to in the relatively soon time. Anyways, this genre is just like a naturally slower paced genre. I think that you really have to be, at least for me, I really have to be in the mood for that kind of book. as I'm usually a fantasy reader and fantasies can be very fast-paced, filled with tons of new information. I also read Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. This book is considered a dark academia book. It is about Catherine House, which is like a big house and a school. It's supposed to be like this elite and selective choice school. Very much like Truly Devious, it is free to go to the school, and what I gather, each student has their own strengths, so again, not much different from Truly Devious. And also quite a bit similar to another book I read recently that I have not talked about on this channel yet. I'm still kind of gathering my feelings on it, called The Lightness. I get very big Lightness vibes from it, but much better than Lightness. This book is like a weird, it's definitely weird and quirky, supernatural, maybe science fiction realm of a book. And I think that I was more confused than anything for most of the book. I really don't feel like I can give this book a star rating just yet. I want to give it one more reread. I have the ebook that I would like to read it. I believe that it was intentional to scramble my brain the way that it did, making me feel like I'm stupid or something because I didn't get it right away. This book is getting a lot of hype on booktube. I think mostly everyone is anticipating reading this book, and if you have read it, have liked it, and I don't know about the rest. Likely, like me, they're still scratching their heads about this one. The concept is these students enroll for various reasons. They commit to a prescribed amount of time, I think it was like a year or 2 years, and they give up all modern technology, external influences, and family. Anything outside of the school is off limits. So they hand themselves over completely to this school. Mostly it's just a school, but there's a group, like a science group that studies plasm, I want to say. I feel like that's incorrect. I think it's plasm. I guess it's the same word that they use for like ghost goo. I totally thought that I had that wrong for the longest time. I was like, no, wait, no. I didn't know that this was a supernatural book at all. So I kept thinking I had that wrong, or I was waiting for them to like explain what this plasm is. This story got really creepy, and it kind of was, you could feel the tension gathering as the story went on. You could feel the creepiness becoming more and more palpable. It definitely was atmospheric, which I thought was very well done. What was really creepy is how the kids who were really involved in this plasm research, this private group, the more you kind of got to know about how deep their involvement went, the creepier they got. That's where I really felt the whole Lightness vibes. It was almost like some weird dream that wasn't really real, but it was real to them. Bizarre, kind of. What I did not like about this book, however, is that it was supposed to be a highly academic setting, but it felt a lot more like a halfway house. All these kids did was run around doing excessive drugs and drinking, and we didn't get a lot of like the school portion. And our main character, maybe she was part of why it lost its academic setting for me, is because our main character was there because she had no other options. It was free. She's not really the most academic person. It was an out for her, kind of, and maybe some of our other characters were pretentious, school-loving kind of characters. I just didn't get that vibe. I was also very confused by Inez, our main character, her best friend, and really just kind of the whole age group as a whole. Her best friend is called Baby. I have a thing with names. More and more, whenever I run into crazy names, it drives me crazy, okay? So her name is Baby, and she acted like a real little girl. So I was thinking, okay, maybe this is more before I really got the feel of this elite school that it was intended to be. I was starting to feel like maybe it was like an orphanage, and there's all these different ages there. But then I think it was intended to have like young adult, high school age, but then I didn't know. It seemed like a little bit older crowd, so maybe early 20s. A lot of these kids are already like very comfortable with having sexual partners, which isn't very it's a little bit older group, you know what I mean? Overall, in general, I still cannot put my finger on the age group this was intended for, and our characters and like what age group they kind of fit into. Finally, I read the Bane Chronicles to finish up my latest installment of the Shadowhunters reading vlog that I am doing. It was just fun. It was a short story collection, talks mainly about the life and times of Magnus Bane, our favorite warlock, throughout his different stages in life, and we get a little bit of history, like we get to see the historical setting of the Victorian era France and shenanigans and some of his friends. Like, it was just a fun time. I really enjoyed that book. The book of the month for the Dark Academics book club is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is another book that is beloved around booktube, and I'm starting to feel like I don't understand the hype. I'm actually not finished with this book yet. I'm about 75% through. I am also reading Children of Blood and Bone, which I have not finished yet. I picked that up for Cramathon and I still haven't finished it yet. I actually forgot what other book I read during the month of July. That is The Home for Unwanted Girls by Saskia Marleveld. Hope I'm saying that right. I listened to this on audiobook. I gave this book 4.5 stars. Loved this book. I believe it's Own Voices, and it's Canadian historical fiction. Yeah, it's about a woman who gets pregnant when she's too young, unwed, and her parents make her give up the baby. She was told that her daughter would get adopted. As it turns out, it's not exactly what happened, and the laws changed, so the government didn't have any more money for orphanages. So they changed the orphanages into mental patient homes. So now all the orphans now become mental patients. It just wreaked havoc. I thought that was so interesting. Yeah, I just really wanted to share that book with you guys. I thought it was such a beautiful story. Just all the feels in this book. It was so good. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.